So I just wanted real quick, I know that you grew up in Tennessee, so this might be something you've been asked before, but I grew up in Alabama. And on the farm we had horses, and that was just my favorite part of being on the farm. And I've noticed in a lot of your roles, you're with horses, you take roles. First episode of Strange New Worlds, you're doing some riding. Yeah. Obviously held on wheels. When did you first get that passion for horse?
Well, I grew up in a very rural part of Tennessee, and so a lot of my friends had horses. I grew up comfortable on a horse, but I would not have considered myself an equestrian going into hell on wheels. And it's certainly, working with a horse on a set is a whole different skill set. They're just things that you have to know. Mm-hmm. Like, horses don't like umbrellas. And so the crew has to know that too, because their whole instinct is if it starts raining, it's protect the hair and the makeup. So they will come running at you with this little thing that becomes a large thing very quickly. Horses don't like that. Just you need to let them. If there's a new piece of equipment, the horse needs to smell it. Hoses look like snakes. So if you're working with pyrotechnics or fire on set, and your special effects department doesn't know that, you can get into trouble real fast. You got to know, because you're also working. There are a lot of instances where you're having to cut and chase pretty quickly, and you need to know if the horse you're on has a hard mouth and what that means and how to correct if they do. Just stuff like that. But the biggest thing really is getting to the point where you are familiar enough with your specific horse that there's a part of your brain that is sort of, you know how after you've been driving how when you first start driving, you're like, everything is a decision, right? And then eventually you get to the place where you'll show up at work and you forget which route you took. Right? It's the same thing with a horse, is that you have to get to where your brain is reading that horse's mind all the time without having to think about it, so the rest of your brain is acting. And so I lost count the number of scenes I had to pull down off the horse because our guest stars, they just weren't given enough time. It takes weeks, if not months. And so you'll start to do the scene and you can see that they're just not there. And so I would have to just sort of re-block the scene and get them down off the horses.
So switching gears from your chemistry with horses to chemistry with cast, one of the things that, for me, I noticed with Strange New Worlds, from episode 1, it was like you guys had been together ages. You just really played off each other very well. And did the personalities behind the scenes just click when you guys met?
Well, first of all, Ethan and Rebecca and I had the advantage of having worked with each other on Discovery, so that was good. But the rest of the cast, I had no idea who they were casting, how they would be to work with. And we got really lucky. We ended up with a group of solid adults, and we have fun working together. We seem to like each other for the most part. We clicked pretty quickly. It was also we benefited a little bit from the hunker down and let's get this done aspect of the pandemic, because we were shooting in the middle of the pandemic.
And then, I guess when you coming in as Chris Pike, that's a character in Star Trek that, most of us Star Trek fans, we've had that one episode, the 2 episodes, and Eric pilot to go from, and then I guess Bruce Greenwood in the J.J. Abrams movies. What was it like for you to develop that character, to make it your own? With such little source material, it seemed like it was kind of wide open.
It was nerve-wracking on one level, and then just because of I knew it was a canonical character that really people had a lot of hopes for, but also it was a bit freeing in the fact that like I think that Ethan had a bigger job, a more difficult job than me, because we didn't, as you said, we didn't have a lot of Pike to go on, so there was a tremendous amount of freedom there to develop the character, and I'm also a big believer that this is my Pike. Jeffrey had his Pike, Bruce had his Pike. It's like, you know, when you go to the theater in London and you're playing Hamlet, nobody asks you, did you make your own Hamlet? Like, yeah, I did. Did you feel intimidated by Benedict Cumberbatch's Hamlet? No, not really. So, yeah, it was a real. I think it was a really good combination of those two things. A lot of expectation, a lot of excitement, and yet a lot of room to grow the character.
Now, part of the character that I particularly enjoy is the fact that Captain Pike cooks. So I'm curious, is that something you brought to the role, or do you cook at home to that level, or
no? It just came in our conversation with Akiva and Henry before season 1. We were just talking character, and what was this conversation? We were talking about. Oh, they were asking me what I felt about the character, and I was saying I only know a couple of things. And one of those things I said that whenever, because he's smart enough to know his greatest asset is his crew. So whenever a crew member comes through the door of his office, everything else goes away. The crew member is front and center. What do you need, right? And Akiva, for some reason, he said, I'm getting kind of a feeling or an image of like, you know, dinners around the captain's table, maybe, and what that would look like. And I said, oh, what if, you know, what if every captain gets an ask for the quarters? And because I can't bring my horse, what if Pike really likes to cook? And so his one ask was a kitchen. And Akiva goes, I'm calling our production designer right now, and we're gonna get you a kitchen. So they did, and it's been a lot of fun. It was a great way to play, but then we realized later on we can't. All of our social engagements can't be formal. We got to have a place where we can just drop in for a drink and shoot the shit real quick. And so that's why the bar set came about in season 2.
Now, is the kitchen functional? I mean, is it practical, or is that just...
No, it's not. I mean, no, it's not practical at all.
It's all CG.
Yeah, they have like little smoke machines in there, and they have little lights to make it look like there's hot coals, and they've got water. The sink runs water, but it goes into a vat below it, and because you have to understand, we're in the middle of a sound stage that we can't drill through. We're not allowed to. And they have a really cool element I love is that one of the islands in the middle of the kitchen. It doesn't do this practically, but we have another version of it where it's popped up, and all the herbs are in this island, right?
So I don't want to be the only one who gets to ask a question.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, we'll open it up to the audience. And if you have okay, so you first.
Hi. So I'd love to know a little bit more about Space Rhapsody.
Okay.
I wanted to ask that question.
They tend to cast people who have big theater backgrounds with a lot of work. And so I'd love to know sort of a two-part question. A, was Space Rhapsody exciting or terrifying? And then the sort of tangent to that is, how does that theater training and compare or come into when you're working in this medium?
Okay, great question. So the first part of the question was about Subspace Rhapsody, and if that was nerve-wracking. We'd actually been lobbying Akiva and Henry for a musical episode when we realized how many singers were in the cast. And not me, of course, but I was lobbying for it because I like oh shit situations. I think they're very healthy for creativity and for the team. And I felt that would be a big oh shit situation. And Akiva and Henry's mantra, and I try to take them up on this all the time. Akiva and Henry's mantra is Star Trek can be a lot of things. It has gotten to the point where it is almost its own genre. So why don't we try playing with genre within it? Which I think was a brilliant idea, and it really let us push the boundaries of the show. Tom Polchek is CBS's music supervisor across the board, and he took the reins of this like a champ. And he worked on the score with another writer and got it to us very early, and our on-the-ground production team in Toronto scheduled it within an inch of its life. And to be honest with you, we never felt a time crunch, which is impressive considering the fact that we had to cut an entire album while we were shooting before we ever shot a frame of that episode. And we had to do choreography on the weekends. But because it was shooting towards the end of the season, and usually that's when everybody's tired, but it just gave this tremendous burst of energy to the cast. Like it's not often you look around on a Sunday rehearsal and everybody's excited to be there. And I for me, the only oh shit moment was really when I was working with Tom. When we were sort of gauging everybody's vocal range. He was, he said something about it. He was like, I'm sensing like you do really well with John Cougar Mellencamp. I was like, yes, I can nail some John Cougar. Or some country, right? And so then I get the score, and it's this Broadway score. I was like, where is Johnny Cougar? I was thinking I was going to be singing I Fight Authority, but no. And the other part of the question was, how does theater training relate to this medium? So it's like, I tell most people, it's the difference between downhill skiing and water skiing. They're the same muscles, completely different applications. And completely different lifestyles. But I think there's training that I got in graduate school that I still use. I use it that was intended for theater that I use in film all the time, and I hear the voices of my teachers in my head all the time. I constantly hear Andre Servan singing, Anson, it is so boring what you're doing here. It would be so good if this was Tennessee Williams, but it is not Anson. I'm so sorry to say. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it does certainly has helped. Yeah.
Lady right here, yeah.
One of the things, we watched the show as a family.
Okay.
And I know one of the things that is often commented upon, and we heard about the kitchen, is that Captain Pike is kind of like Captain Dad. You could comment on if that was really something that was suggested to you. I mean, we really love the kind of way
No.
that comes together.
That has never come out of the mouth of any producer. That's something you guys, which I think is flattering, and I think that's great. I love that. But no, if anything, I think if anything, I try to work against that sometimes because it is a quasi-military outfit. I think that there are times in which Star Trek has lost sight of that. And it's okay to love each other, but that's not what we're out on our 5-year mission to do. But I do consider it a compliment. Thank you.
All the way in the back.
So, this new show feels a lot like the old ones in terms of just like shenanigan-based episodes.
Oh, the series. I thought you meant this convention. What other shenanigans are happening here? On this show? Gosh, good question. Oh, there was one that we actually ended up doing, so I can't tell you about it. So, I mean, it's really hard with this show because we can, there's nothing you can bring to this writers, and they go, not sure that would work. They're like, everything is okay, let's think about how that would work and if that would fit in with the overall thing that we're trying to do. If it doesn't fit into the overall thing we're trying to do, it could be a great idea, but it's not going to be a stair step in that particular season, right? So, because they're thinking, even though our show is episodic, they are thinking on emotional arcs. So everything has to have a reason to fit into that particular place and in the order that we need it to happen. Right. So we're constantly, we've come up with more ideas than we've done. There's this concept called whiteboarding, which is in the writer's room, the first thing that you tend to, they start meeting 3 months in advance of shooting, and the first few days of the writer's room is just throwing up weird, random, there's no bad ideas on the whiteboard. And a few of those will make it through, right? I can tell you what we haven't done that I want to do as a Western episode. I think it's begging for it, but the question is really what that's going to be and how to do it correctly. Because I have told Keith and Henry I am dead set against doing, phasers and holsters, white hat, black hat, everybody's shirt is immaculately clean, kind of Bud Bedecker Western. I'm not interested in doing that. I want to do Sergio Leone Western. The dirty, gritty, take it seriously Western. Yeah. Right.
So what kind of made you want to pick this kind of role? Like, did they just call you and you were like, heck yeah, or did you have some interest in it prior to being called?
Great question. So there's a story to this. So when I was finishing up Hell on Wheels, I was doing my rounds and meetings in LA, and I was in the office of Joe McNamara, who was running CBS All Access at the time, and they hadn't even launched. And I had to ask my reps, what the hell is CBS All Access? And so she's the one who told me, don't tell anybody, but we're gonna do a Star Trek show. And I was like, what? And I remember going out to the parking lot outside of her office and immediately calling my agents and saying, get me on the show. So calls happened, and then they hired Jason Isaacs. Which at the time, right, was like fair play. He was perfectly cast. He was really good, and thank God. All right, because they called back next year and said, "Hey, we got a new captain. Would you be interested?" And and that turned out to be Pike. And what they did not tell me is that year previous, Akiva Goldsman showed up in the writer's room, who had just he'd taken a call from Alex, and Akiva's like upper echelon of, he doesn't have to do this. He's like an amazing screenwriter. So just based on a quick call with Alex, he's like, yeah, I want to be in the writer's room on Star Trek. Sure, give me a producer credit and let me come in and I'll do what I can. So he shows up and he's like, wait, what? This isn't a Pike show? He's like, you told me it was a prequel. And they're like, yeah, but it's on a different ship. And he's like, what? Why? I was like, why are we doing this? So he was like, we gotta do a Pike show, man. So I was just like, okay, let me think about it. So then he was like, all right, why don't we sort of put Pike in this show for a season and just sort of see how that works? And didn't tell me any of this, thank God. And then, you know, what happened, and the rest is history. Yeah.
So based on that answer, in your reaction to being on a Star Trek show, were you a big fan of the series beforehand, like growing up?
Yeah. So the original series started airing in syndication on our local UHF channel 7 or 8, and my mother had seen it when it originally aired, so she made me start watching it with her, and I got hooked, and that became my make-believe game as a child. And you know, me and my friends we pulled up chairs in front of my parents' fireplace, and for some reason that was a bridge. And, we'd always argue over who was going to be Kirk and who was going to be Spock, and there was never an Uhura because girls wouldn't play with us. Yeah. Huh? Well, we all took turns being the different characters. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
You pick. I don't want to pick.
Okay, on the front row.
Have you met Shatner? Because you could use that force
Yeah.
to break the ice.
No, I've met Bill many times. He loves to talk about his horses. That's all he does now. Other than flying to space, he trains horses and he goes to space. Funny enough, I was recording the opening monologue to our show back. I guess it was in October after we shot the first season, but they were doing post. And this was still in the pandemic, so they had to send me a kit that had a sound booth in my basement, and then we were uplinked to the technical team in New York and the post-production team in Los Angeles. And it was in October of that year, and I was like, can we just pause for a second to realize how cool we're getting to do this monologue right now? And everybody's like, yeah, this is because they're all trained. And then I was like, wait a second. You guys realize that Shatner's in orbit right now. And he was. We recorded that monologue while William Shatner was in orbit around the Earth. He couldn't have written that.
That's awesome. There's a gentleman with a ball cap and glasses.
Kind of changing course on Marvel. Was it a challenge playing Black Bolt, being the character who cannot talk and has to show expression without saying anything?
Yeah, but that's why I took the job. I knew it was something I could nerd out on. So I showed Chris Fisher, funny enough, who's our producing director on Strange New Worlds, was my producing director on Inhumans. And it was the first time we met, so the first day I got there, I walked into his office, and he said, okay, so I got this figured out. So here's what we're just gonna come up with 12 different, gestures you can do, and we won't know what you're saying, and you can just pretend you're talking with your hands. And I was like, no, that is not what we will be doing. I will be inventing my own language. And so that's what I did.
My favorite line from Doctor Strange was your...
Yeah, I came up with that. I came up with a lot of that, including the one line I had. They wanted to be something badass, like, go away. Or something like, no. What are you doing?
The cat ears. Oh, sorry.
That's a very good one.
It's so hard to say what, they're all, there are no throwaway episodes in our series, so and they all have their different challenges. I mean, obviously the musical was special for us, but that's not going to be our weirdest episode. You're about to see some crazy stuff in season 3. That's really hard. That's a really hard one to answer. And different ones, they just have different sensibilities because we rotate our directors. and we rotate genres. I don't know. I really liked the pilot. I liked season 4 of episode 1. I thought it turned out really well.
Okay. In the back in purple.
Hello. So all of the captains have their own, like, when the ship gets go, they can so hit it, whatever. Do you get to come up with that on your own, or do they?
No. They're not looking for input from the actors. No. I appreciate the fact that you think I have any level of power on this show.
You're the captain.
No.
Do you find, as captain though, and we've seen this in previous series where you become kind of the leader of the cast, do you see that on your show that much?
I mean, I try to be cognizant of that in certain ways that, it's good to say hi to the crew in the morning, and, it's good to give a nice speech at the beginning of the season, and make sure nobody's feeling left out or anything like that, making sure guest stars are situated, but I don't need to really lead our cast. Everybody's pretty well taken care of themselves, and everybody's an adult, and thank goodness.
Well, something else I noticed on that is that in this series, Captain Pike doesn't seem to have to be in every scene in every episode.
Right.
You've given the cast a chance to grow individually. I mean, it's
Well, I like to say,
episodes.
I am not the star of the show. The Enterprise is the star of the show, and we've tried to keep. That's why when you see our credits, you don't see me. You see the ship.
Engineer.
What was your favorite part of doing Hell on Wheels?
My favorite part of doing Hell on Wheels, man, I just love doing that show so much. I mean, every part about it. Getting to work outside every day I love it. I'm a country boy, and that's the hardest part about doing track, honestly, is working inside every day. But working with those horses, they're the best actors you'll ever work with. Everything that they think or feel is exhibited on their skin. My cast was wonderful, and I don't know, it was just a really special show. It was a really special job. I just loved every second of it. I want to do another Western.
Can we get a guest appearance from Common on Strange New Worlds?
He's a little busy these days.
In the denim?
Thank you for taking my question. Imagine my delight when I learned that Captain Pike is based by Gene Roddenberry off of Admiral Ernest King as a lifelong Star Trek fan in
Did not know that.
Roddenberry served under Admiral King, and then the book that he wrote and the follow-on script were based on that real person. So my question for you, sir, is do you turn to historical characters or people from history or other characters when you're designing the persona that you want to portray?
What an awesome question. I'm trying to think.
I'm really excited.
Well, with Colin Bohannon, certainly. Yeah, there's a great book. If anybody's interested in the history of the railroad, there's a fantastic. There was a lot of books, but the one that kind of became our Bible was a book called Nothing Like It in the World by Stephen A. Ambrose, who wrote Band of Brothers. It's known as his only non-military subject, but then when you start reading it, you realize it's actually a military subject, because all of those guys were recently furloughed from the Civil War, and they had been trying to kill each other like 3 months ago, and they had to start working together, which is part of what made that such an interesting environment. So there's two guys that Cullen is based on, a combination of a former Union general who was foreman, Granville Dodge, or maybe he was chief engineer, Granville Dodge, and then the foreman, for a long time, and I can't remember if he was on Union Pacific or Central Pacific, and his name is escaping me right now. But and then outside of that, I haven't really. It is a great thing to do, looking up old photographs and trying to guess what that person's voice would sound like, and things like that. But that's the only thing that's coming to me right now.
I got a Power Ranger.
Actually, there's a specific historical person I had to portray this season, and I can't tell you about it.
Another season, aren't you?
But I did some of that.
The Power Ranger with the blue ball cap?
Yeah. One role that got me interested, but I've not watched your performance yet, was Injustice anime movie as
I'm
voice of.
sorry, I can't hear you, but
Gotta speak up.
I did some of that.
The Power Ranger with the blue ball cap?
Yeah. One role that got me interested, but I've not watched your performance yet, was Injustice anime movie as voice
I'm
of.
sorry, I can't hear you, but
Go louder, go louder.
Gotta speak up.
So I saw you in Star Trek, Inhumans, and Doctor Strange, but one role that was interesting to me, but I've not watched, was your voice as Batman in the Injustice movie, if you remember it. How was the experience?
it was great. Wes Gleason is one of the top animation directors out there. And Wes and I have developed a working relationship and a friendship, and I'll do anything he asks me to do. Injustice, I think is a very interesting series, and obviously Batman is one of the iconic characters out there. I had a brush with being considered for Batman at one point, and so this is sort of my little revenge, where they get to not pay me very much. There may or may not be more Batman in the works.
Good. There's a gentleman.
Wes Gleason is one of the top animation directors out there. And Wes and I have developed a working relationship and a friendship, and I'll do anything he asks me to do. Injustice, I think is a very interesting series, and obviously Batman is one of the iconic characters out there. I had a brush with being considered for Batman at one point, and so this is sort of my little revenge.
Glad I got answered this question.
Not pay me very much. There may or may not be more Batman in the works.
Good. There's a gentleman in black all the way over.
Oh man. So Michael is so much fun, as you can imagine. That was a Cool Junkies. That was a fun shoot. It was a tough shoot in a lot of different ways, but it sparked a lifelong friendship with Michael. It was one of our, we were in our 20s and just sort of marveling at getting to work with Chris Walken and, Rod Steiger, which turned out to be Rod's last movie. I tell people that now, that I was in Rod Steiger's last movie with him, and they're like, what? I have stories from that movie. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
And then in green over here.
Do you have a dream project that you just love to work on?
I get asked that all the time, and I don't know. This is why I'm not a writer, because I know it when I see it. I mean, there are roles in the theater that I want to play, It's not, I'm not really in the theater time of my life right now. It's the worst possible schedule when you're a parent. Um, uh, you know, I don't know. There's nothing really coming to mind.
You have a command uniform, gentlemen.
At the risk of that sounding contrary regarding your power in the show, wasn't it the pipe troika of you and Ethan and Rebecca that sold and touched the nerve out here, and that's why the show came about at all?
Maybe. I think there's definitely public support for it, and I'm tremendously grateful for that. There was, it was clearly noticed on the network level, so yeah, I'm sure that had something to do with it, but you would not have known it by the network's pace. Let's just put it that way. There came a time where I was like, this is not gonna happen, because we didn't have contracts. And they were operating, I mean, they ordered a script, paid for a script. You know, we're in discussions for it, and none of us had contracts. I was like, somebody's gonna get a job, and this is not gonna happen.
Did that eventually become season 1, episode 1?
Sorry, what?
Did that script eventually become season 1, episode 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Young lady right here in the front.
Good afternoon, thank you for coming out and here with us. You touched on filming during COVID.
Yeah.
So when you suppressed at home, you suppressed together, how did that work?
During season 1?
Yeah.
So the question was how did we handle COVID during season 1? Very carefully. So there had to be special dispensation from the government of Canada, and it quickly came to our realization that between the Canadian standards, provincial standards, and network standards, we were going to have to create an entirely new department, which is a big consideration, both logistically and financially. So once that was figured out, we could just I remember driving up with my family in a U-Haul and stopping at the Niagara Falls. If you've ever been through the Niagara Falls border check, it's a huge facility, right? And walking into this gigantic, domed thing that's almost the size of this floor, these dimensions, and being the only person there. It was so trippy because the border was not open. And then, just sort of having to deal with how are we going to get the vaccine when the vaccine came out. It wasn't in Canada. It did not exist. It was pretty wild. It was just figure it out as you go. I was amazed. We did not shut down once during season 1. Now, because of restrictions, we had to save all of our scenes involving 10 or more background artists to the end of the season. And we had to go back, and so there was 2 weeks at the end of the season that was just what episode am I shooting today? It was really crazy. So all of those crowd scenes outside of the assembly on the alien planet in episode 1, that was all shot at the very end of the schedule.
Okay, we're down to our last 5 minutes. We'll try to jump around. I think you with the flat cap.
Mine sort of follows up on that one a little bit, tangentially, but one of the things that we all love about Star Trek is the sense of family among the characters, and you guys nailed that from the get-go, even pre-Strange New Worlds. People felt comfortable with each other, great chemistry among the characters and the actors, and I was curious how you guys achieved that, especially during COVID.
It's certainly not a consideration from a production point of view. It's, you know, people expect you to show up on time and have your lines memorized and do your job. There's not a lot of that. But we understood the challenge of that. There's a lot of time on set. Like the far majority of our time is not acting. Far majority of our time is waiting. So there's plenty of time to get to know each other. The first time that a lot of us met is that my birthday fell right before we started shooting, so I had an outdoor ice skating get together for everybody for my birthday. And so you do things like that, and you know, there may or may not have been one or two evenings where a hotel suite was rented and protocols were ignored.
So now that we're right down to the wire, I want to thank you for being here and sharing your time with us today.
Awesome, dude.
You're going to be at your table, I guess, for the rest of the day. So if people have more questions or want to get some pictures or autographs, Anson will be available. I want to thank everyone here for coming out and joining us today, and I hope you're having a great time at the show. So.
Good evening, Tidewater Comicon goers. If you are going to be here for the next panel, we ask that you go outside and get in your respective line.